Hey guys, and welcome back to yet another episode. On today's show, we're going to be taking a look at Guardians of the Hood, which was released into arcades by Atari Games back in June of 1992. And if you're thinking to yourself that this looks a little bit like Pit Fighter, well, you're right, it does look a lot like Pit Fighter, and there's a reason for that. It is the follow-up, although it's not directly related story-wise. Storyline in this one is pretty simple. It's all about the search for the evil Mr. Big, who's in charge of all of the gang activity in the city. The gangs you'll have to contend with are the Dreads, the Shavers, and the Dragons. There's nothing too special about any of these gangs, they're pretty stereotypical. The character select is where things start to get a little bit more interesting and unique with Guardians of the Hood. You've got 4 of them to start with, and they include Connor, Chief, Tanya, and Javier. Now keep in mind, they're all basically the same kind of characters, just with different stats, where some are fast, where others are a little bit stronger, and etc. Bosses are playable once you beat them in the main game, and they include JJ, Boris, and Quan. These 3 are the head of the 3 major gangs in the game. The gameplay itself works a lot like Pit Fighter, although I hate to keep bringing it up, it's just a very, very similar game. The difference here is that where Pit Fighter was a 3-button game, this one actually uses 5 buttons. So you have 3 attack buttons, a muscle button, which can help you pull off certain special moves, and then a guard or defend button as well. Keep in mind too that using different combinations of all of these 5 buttons can lead to each of the characters doing some pretty unique moves that can come in handy, especially during some of the boss fights. Okay, so in between every couple levels, there is this gym bonus stage thing that you've got to do, and I can't stand these. These are one-on-one fights, or it's basically like tapping buttons to lift weights. You don't get any rewards for finishing the bonus stages, but the later ones can be really tricky about preventing you from moving on. It's advised to tag in a second player for this so that you can win these much more easily if you have any problems. That way you can just beat up the second player and move on to the next stage with no issues. So, the graphics in this one, to be fair, aren't great, but hey, I still think it looks a whole lot better than Pit Fighter in that there's a lot more variation going on here. The character sprites are all really big, and they're animated well enough for the technology at the time. Again, still a little bit better than Pit Fighter was. There's really not a whole lot of variety going on when it comes to the actual enemy sprites, considering that most of them are just the same, just with some different color patterns depending on how much health whatever enemy has. Even with that, there's some pretty cool background details going on here and there, and some of the effects that happen when the bosses come out are really awesome. Sound and music in this one is a bit of a mixed bag as well. The sound effects are good and they're crisp, but they're really, really loud and they kind of overpower everything. The music, on the other hand, is actually kind of good, and there are a few tracks in there that are pretty catchy. The only problem is most of it just repeats an awful lot in this game. So, to wrap up, Guardians of the Hood is a pretty fun, although incredibly cheesy, digitized beat-em-up. If you kind of like Pit Fighter, you're gonna love this. If you're just a fan of kind of the cheesy, digitized beat-em-ups or fighting game style of the early 90s, this is also gonna be right up your alley. Emulation is probably going to be the way you're going to want to go if you want to try this game out for most people, but even if you do collect arcade boards, this one is really not that expensive. I think I ended up getting my board for this for around $40 or so, and for that price I just couldn't pass it up. It's pretty fun to play through by yourself, and it gets really crazy when co-op gets involved. You know, I've heard a lot of people trash this one over the years, and it's really not nearly as bad as people say it is. You just kind of have to take it with a grain of salt and enjoy it. As always, I'd like to thank you all for watching, subscribing, and of course commenting, and until next time, stay classic.